Hello and welcome to the Agile Innovation Leaders Podcast. I'm Ola Ojako. On this podcast, I speak with world-class leaders and doers about themselves and a variety of topics spanning agile, lean innovation, business, leadership, and much more, with actionable takeaways for you, the listener.
So I have with me here Bala Madhusoodhanan, who is a principal architect with a global luxury brand, and he looks after their RPA and AI transformation. So it's a pleasure to have you on the Agile Innovation Leaders podcast, Bala. Thank you for making the time.
It's a pleasure to have conversation with the podcast and the podcast audience, Ula. I've followed the podcast and they have been fantastic speakers in the past. So feel privileged to join you on this conversation.
Well, the privilege is mine. So could you start off with telling us about yourself, Bala? What have been the key points or the highlights of your life that have led to you being the Bala we know now?
It's putting self into uncharted territory. So my background is mechanical engineering, and when I got the job, it was either you go into the mechanical engineering manufacturing side or the software side, which was slightly booming at that point of time, and obviously it was paying more. Then decided to take the software route, but eventually somewhere the path kind of overlapped. So from a mainframe background, started working on supply chain and then came back to optimization, tied back to manufacturing industry. Somewhere there is an overlap, but yeah, that was the first decision that probably got me here. The second decision was to work in a UK geography rather than a US geography, which is again very strange. In a lot of my peers, they generally go to Silicon Valley or East Coast. I just took a choice to stay here for personal reasons. The third was like the mindset. I mean, I had over the last 15, 20 years, I had really good mentors, really good peers. So I always had their help to soundboard my crazy idea, and I always try to keep relationship ongoing.
What I'm hearing is, based on what you said last, relationships have been key to getting you to where you are today, both with from mentors, peers. Could you expand on that? In what ways or what ways?
The technology is changing quite a lot, at least in the last 10 years. If you look into 2010, there was no machine learning, or it was statistics. People were just saying everything is statistics, and accessibility to information was not that much. But post 2010, 2011, people started getting accessibility. Then there was a data buzz, big data came in. So there were a lot of opportunities where I could have taken a different career path, but every time I was in a dilemma which route to take, I had someone with whom either I have worked or who was my team lead or manager to guide me, to tell me like, take emotion out of the decision making and think in a calm mind, because you might jump into something and you might like it, you might not like it, you should not regret it. Again, over the course of like so many such decisions, my cognitive mind has also started thinking about it. So those conversations really help. And again, collective experience. If you look into the decision making, it's not just my decision. I'm going through conversation that I had with people where they have applied their experience. So it's not just me or just not one situation. Always understand the why behind that, and that actually helps. In short, it's like a collection of conversation that I had with peers. Few of them are visionary leaders, they are good readers, so they always had a good insight on where I should focus, where I shouldn't focus. Of late, recently, there has been a community buzz. So a lot of things is moving to open source. There is a lot of community exchange of conversation. The blogging has picked up a lot. So yeah, connecting to those part also give you a different dimension to think about.
So you said community boards. Could you express some of the listeners or people who are watching the video might not understand what you mean by the community boards? Are you talking about like meetups or communities that come around to discuss shared interests?
if you are very much specifically interested on AI, or you are specifically interested on Power Platform or a low code platform, there are a lot of content creators on those topic. You can go to YouTube, LinkedIn, and you get a lot of information about what's happening. They do a lot of hackathons. Again, you need to invest time in all these things. If you don't, then you are basically missing the boat. There are various channels like hackathon or meetup groups, or I mean, it could be as like a virtual conversation like you and me. We both have some passionate topics. That's why we resonate and we are talking about it. So
Mhm.
it's all about you taking an initiative, you finding time for it, and then yeah, you have tons and tons of information available through community or through conferences or meetup groups.
Okay, but thanks for clarifying. So you said as well, you've had a collection of conversations that helped you whenever you were at a crossroad, some new technology or something emerges, or there's a decision you had to make, and checking in with your mentors, your peers, and let's call them your personal board of directors almost, that they gave you guidance. Now, looking back, would you say there were some turns you took that, knowing what you know now, you would have done differently?
I would have liked to study more. That is the only thing, because sometimes the educational degree, even though without a practical knowledge, has a bigger advantage in
Yes.
certain conversation. Otherwise, your experience and your content should speak for you, and it takes a little bit of effort and time to get that trust among leaders or peers, just to even them to trust, saying like, okay, this person knows what he's talking about. I
I
should probably
understand.
trust, rather than someone has done a PhD, and it's just that finding the right balance of when I should have invested time in continuing my education. If I had time, I would have gone back 2 years and did everything that I had done, like minus 2 years, offset it by 2 years earlier. It would have given me different pathways. That is what I would think. But again, it's all constraints. I did the best at that point of time with whatever constraints I had. So I don't have any regret per se. But yeah,
I
if there is a
understand.
magic wand, I would do that.
You are like LinkedIn top voice on AI. How would you define AI, artificial intelligence?
I am a bit reluctant to give a term artificial intelligence. It's in my mind, it is artificial narrow intelligence. It's slightly different. So let me start with a building block, which is machine learning.
Yeah.
So machine learning is like data labeler. You go to a Tesco store, you read the label, you know it is a can of soup because you have read the label. Your brain is not only processing that image, it understands like the surrounding, it does lot of things. When you pick that can of soup, you can't expect that by just feeding one model to a robot. So
Hmm.
that's why I'm saying like AI is bit over glorified. In my mind, it is artificial narrow intelligence. What you do to automate certain specific tasks using a data set which is legal, ethical, and drives business value is what I would call machine learning. But yeah, it's just overhyped and heavily utilized term AI.
You said there's a hype around artificial intelligence. So what do you mean by that? And where do you see it going?
Going back to the machine learning definition that I said, it's
Mm.
basically predicting an output based on some input. That's as simple as what we would say machine learning. The word algorithm is basically something like a pattern finder. What you're doing is you are giving a lot of data which is properly labeled, which has proper diversity of information, and there are multiple algorithms that can find patterns. The cleverness or engineering mind that you bring in is to select which pattern or which algorithm you would like to do for your use case. Now you are channeling the whole machine learning into one use case. That's why I'm going with the term narrow intelligence. Computers can do brilliant jobs. So you ask computers to do like a Rubik's cubes solving, it will do very quick because the task is very simple and it is just doing a lot of calculation. You give a Rubik's cube to a kid, it has to apply it. The brain is not trained enough, so it has to cognitively learn. Maybe it will be faster. So anything which is just pure calculation, pure computing, If the data is labeled properly, you want to predict an outcome, yes, you can use computer. One of the interesting video that I showed in one of my previous talk was a robot trying to walk across the street. This is in 2018 or 19. The first video was basically talking about robot crossing a street, and there were like vehicles coming across, and the robot just had a headbutt and it just fell off. Now a 4-year-old kid was asked to walk, and it knew that I have to press a red signal. So it went to the signal stop. It hit. It knew, or the baby knew, that I can only walk when it is green, and then it looks around and then walks. So you can see the difference. A
Mm.
4-year-old kid has a contextual awareness of what is happening, whereas the robot, which supposed to be called as artificial intelligence, you know, couldn't see that. Again, if you look, our human brains have been evolved over millions of years. There are like 10 billion neurons or something, and it is highly optimized. So when I sleep, there are different set of neurons which are running. When I speak to you, my eyes and ears are running, my motion sensor neurons are running, but these are all highly optimized. So the mother control knows how much energy should be sent on which neuron,
Mm.
right? Whereas all these large language model, there is only one task. You ask it, it's just going to do that.
Mm. Mm.
It doesn't have that intelligence to optimize. When I sleep, maybe 90% of my neurons are sleeping. It's getting recharged. Only the dream neurons are working. Whereas once you put a model live, it doesn't matter. All the 100,000 neurons would run.
Mm.
So yeah, it's highly, like, it's in very infancy state. Maybe with quantum computing, maybe with
Yeah.
more power and better chips,
Mm.
things might change. But I don't see that happening in next 5 to 10 years.
Now, what do you say about Gen AI? Would you also classify generative AI as purely artificial narrow intelligence?
The thing with generative AI is you're trying to generalize lot of use cases. Say ChatGPT, you can throw in a PDF, you can ask something, or you can say, hey, can you create a content for my blog, or things like that, right?
Yeah.
Again, all it is trying to do is it has some historical content with which it is trying to come up with a response. The thing that I would say is humans are really good with creativity. If a problem is thrown at a person, he will find creative ways to solve it. The tool that with which we are going to solve might be a Gen AI tool. I don't know, because I don't know the problem. Because Gen AI is in a hype cycle, every problem doesn't need Gen AI. That's my view. So there was an interesting research which was done by someone in Montreal University. It talks about like 10 of the basic tasks, like converting text to text or text to speech, or some basic generative AI model, or multiple models, because you have a lot of vendors providing different Gen AI models. And then they went with task specific model. And the thing that they found was the task specific model were cheap to run, very, very scalable and robust, and highly accurate, right? Whereas Gen AI, if when you try to use it, and when it goes into a production ready or enterprise ready, and if it is used by customers or third party which are not part of your ecosystem, you are putting yourself in some kind of risk category. There could be risk of copyright issues, there could be risk of IP issues, there could be risk of not getting a right consent from someone. I can say, can you create a image of a podcaster named Ula? You never know, because you don't remember that one of your photos on Google or Twitter or somewhere is not set as private.
Mm.
No one has come and asked you saying, I'm using this image. And yeah, it's finding the right balance. So even before taking the technology, I think people should think about what problem are they trying to solve. In my mind, AI or artificial intelligence can have two buckets, right? The first bucket is to do with how can I optimize the existing process? Like there is a lot of things that I'm doing. Is there a better way to do it? Is there an efficient way to do it? Can I save time? Can I save money? Stuff like that. So that is an optimization or driving efficiency lever. Other one could be, I know what to do. I have a lot of data, but I don't have infrastructure or people to do it. Like workforce augmentation. Say I have 10 data entry person who are graduate level. Their only job is to review the receipts or invoice. I work in FCA. I have to manually look it, approve it, and file it. Right now, it is very tedious job. So all you are doing is you are augmenting the whole process with an OCR engine. OCR is optical character recognition. So
Okay.
there are models which again it's a beautiful term for what our eyes do. When we travel somewhere, we get an invoice, we exactly know where to look. What is the total amount? What is the currency I have paid? Have they taken the correct credit card? Is my address correct? All those things unconsciously your brain does it. Whereas you have models on given by different software vendors which have trained to capture these specific entities which are universal language to just pass on data set. You just pass the image and it just picks and maps that information. Someone else will do that job, but as part of your process design, what you would do is I will do the heavy lifting of identifying the points, and I'll give it to someone because I want someone to validate it. It's human at the end. Someone is approving it, or someone
Keeping
is.
human
So they basically put a human in loop,
in the
and
loop.
that's part of human centric design to a problem solving situation. That's your efficiency lever. Then you have something called innovation lever. Like I need to do something radical. I have not done this product or service. Yeah, that's a space where you can use AI again to do small proof of concepts. To one example could be I'm opening a new store. It's in a new country. I don't know how the store layout should look like. These are my products. This is the store square footage. Can you recommend me the best way so that I can sell through a lot? Now a visual merchandising team will have some ideas on where the thing should be. They might give that prompt. Those texts can be converted into image. Once you get the base image, then it's human. It's us. So it'll be a starting point rather than someone inventing everything. It could be a starting point, but can you trust it? I don't know.
And that's why you said, the importance of having a human in the loop.
Yeah, so the human in loop again, it's because we humans bring contextual awareness to the situation, which machine doesn't know. I'll tie back this to the NLP conversation. So natural
Okay.
language processing, it has two components. So you have natural language understanding and then you have natural language generation. When you create a machine learning model, it is doing is it is understanding the structure of language. It's called form. Like I'm giving you 10,000 PDF, or you're reading a Harry Potter book. There is a difference between you reading a Harry Potter book and the machine interpreting that Harry Potter book. Because you would have imagination, you will have context of, oh, in last chapter we were in the hilly region or in a valley. I think it will be like this. The words like mist, cold would, you started already forming images and visualizing stuff. The machine doesn't do that. Machine works on, this is the word, this is a pronoun, this is the noun, this is the structure of language, so the next one should be this, right? So, uh, coming back to the natural language understanding, that is where the context and the form comes into play. Just think of some alphabets put in front of you. You have no idea. But these are alphabet. You recognize A, you recognize B, you recognize the word, but you don't understand the context. One example is I'm swimming against the current. Now, current here is the motion of water. My current code base is version 01. I'm using the same current. The context is different. So yeah, the interpreting the structure of language is one thing. So in natural language understanding, what we try to do is we try to understand the context. NLG, natural language generation, is basically how can I respond in a way where I'm giving you an answer to your query.
Hmm.
And this combine is NLP. It's a big field. There was a research done. The professor is Emily Brender. She's one of the leading professor in NLP space. And the experiment was very funny. It was about a parrot in an island talking to someone, and there was a shark in between, or some sea creature, which basically broke the connection and was listening to what this person was saying and mimicking. Again, this is the problem with NLP, right? You don't have understanding of the context. You don't put empathy to it. You don't understand the voice modulation. Like when I'm talking to you, if you can judge if what my emotion cues are.
Hmm.
You can put empathy. You can tailor the conversation. Like if I'm feeling sad, you can put a different spin. Whereas if I'm chatting to a robot, it's just going to give its standard response.
Hmm.
So again, you have to be very careful in which situation you're going to use it, whether it is for small team, whether it is going to be in public, stuff like that.
So that's interesting because sometimes I join the Masters of Skill Strategy sessions. At the last one, there was someone whose organization or startup was featured, and apparently, what their startup is doing is to build AI solutions that are able to do sentiment analysis. And I think some of these, again, in their early stages, but some of these things are already available to try to understand the tone of voice, the words they say, and match it with maybe the expression, and actually can transcribe virtual meetings, and say, okay, this person said this, they looked perplexed, or they looked slightly happy, or what do you think about that? I understand you're saying that machines can't do that, but it seems like there are already organizations trying to push the envelope towards that direction.
So the example that you gave, right,
Mm,
sentiment of the conversation, again, it is
mm,
going by the structure or the words that I am using. I am feeling good. So good here is positive sentiment. Again, for me, the capability is slightly overhyped.
yeah.
The reason being is it might do 20% or 30% of what a human might do, but the human is any day better than that particular use case, right? So the sentiment analysis typically works on like the sentiment data set, which would say like these are the certain proverbs, these are the certain types of words. This generally refer to a positive sentiment or a good sentiment or feel good factor. The model is only good as the data is. No one is going and constantly updating that dictionary. No one is thinking about it. Like Gen Z have a different lingo, millennials had a different lingo. So again, you have to treat it use case by use case, Ula.
At the end of the day, the way things currently are is that machines aren't at the place where they are as good as humans. Humans are still good at doing what humans do, and that's the key thing.
Interesting use case that I recently read, probably after COVID. So immersive reading. So people with dyslexia. So again, AI is used for good as well. I'm not saying it is completely bad. So AI is used for good, like teaching kids who are dyslexic, right? Speech to text can talk or can translate a paragraph. The kid can hear it, and on the screen, I think OneNote has an immersive reader. It actually highlights which word it is uttering into the ears. And a research study showed that kids who were part of the study group with this immersive reading audio textbook, they had a better grasp of the context and they performed well, and
Hmm.
they were able to manage dyslexia better. Now again, we are using the technology, but again, kudos to the research team. They identified a real problem, they formulated how the problem could be solved, and they tried out, they were successful. Yeah, again, technology is being used. Again, cancer research, they
Hmm.
invest heavily on image clustering. There are a lot of use cases where it's used for good, but then again, when you're using it, you just need to think about biases. You need to understand the risk. I mean, everything is risk and reward. If your reward is outpaying the minimum risk that you are taking, then it's acceptable.
What would you advise leaders of organizations who are considering implementing AI solutions? And what are things we need to consider?
Going back to the business strategy and growth, so that is something that the enterprises or big organization would have in the mind. Always have your AI goals aligned to what they want. So as I said, there are there are two buckets. One is your efficiency driver, operational efficiency bucket. The other one is your innovation bucket. Look at, I mean, just have a sense check of where the business want to invest in. Just
Hmm.
because AI is there doesn't mean you have to use it, right? Look into opportunities where you can drive more values. So that would be my first line of thought. The second would be more to do with educating leaders about AI literacy, like what each models are, what do they do, what are the pitfalls, the ethical awareness about use of AI.
Hmm.
Data privacy is big, so that education is, it's just like 101 high level. You don't need to go into in depth, but educating with some examples on the same business domain, where it has been successful, where it has been not so successful, what are the challenges that they face. That's something that I would urge everyone to invest time on. I think I did mention about security. Again, over the years, the practice has been security is always kept as last. I was fortunate enough to work in organizations where security first mindset was, put in place. Because once you have a proof of value, once you show that to people, people get excited, and it's about messaging it, making sure it is very secured, protecting the end users. So the third one would be, talking about having like secure first design policies or principles. Machine learning or AI is of no good if your data quality is not there. So have a data strategy is something that I would definitely recommend. Yeah, start small. I mean, just like Agile, you take a value, you start small, you realize whether your hypothesis was correct or not, you monitor how you are performed, and then you think about scale.
Hmm.
Just by hello world doesn't mean that you have mastered that. So have that mindset, start small, monitor, have a constant feedback, and then you think about scaling.
What are the key things about ethics in AI do you think leaders should be aware of?
So again, ethical is very subjective. So it's about having different stakeholders to give their honest opinion of whether your solution is the right thing to do against the value of the enterprise, right? And it's not your view or my view. It's a consent view, and certain things where people are involved. You might need to get HR, you might need to get legal, you might need to get brand reputation team to come and assist you, because you don't understand the why behind certain policies were put in place. So one is the solution or is the AI ethical to the core value of the enterprise? So that's the first sense check that you need to do. If you pass that sense check, then comes about a lot of other threats, I would say. Like,
Hmm.
is the model that I'm using, did it have a fair representation of all data set? Like, there's a classic case study on one of a big cloud computing giant using an AI algorithm to filter resumes, and they had to stop it immediately because the data set was all Ivy League, male, white, dominant. It didn't have a right representation. Like, over the 10 years, if I'm just hiring certain type of people, my data is inherently biased. No matter how good my algorithm is, if I don't have that data set. The other example is Clarify AI. I think they got into trouble using very biased data to give an outcome on some decision making to immigration, which has a bigger ramification. Then you talk about fairness, whether the AI system is fair to give you an output. So there was a funny story about a man and a woman in California living together, and I think the woman wasn't provided a credit card, even though everything, the postcode is the same, both of them work in the same company, and I think it was to do with Apple Pay. Apple Pay wanted to bring in a silver credit card, Apple Card or whatever it is. But then it is so unfair that the women who was equally qualified was not given the right credit limit, and the bank clearly said like, oh, the algorithm said so. Then you have privacy concern, right? So all these generic models that you have, that is available, even chat gpt for that matter, you can chat with chat gpt multiple times. You can talk about someone like Trevor Noah,
Hmm.
and you can say like, hey, can you create a joke? Now it has been trained with the jokes that he has done, but has the creator of model got a concern saying, hey Trevor, I'm going to use your content so that I can give better. I mean, how many such consent, even Wikipedia, if you look into Wikipedia about 80% of the information is public, but it is not diversified. What I mean by that is you can search for a lot of information if the person is from America or from UK or from Europe, maybe from India to some extent. But what is the quality of data if you think about countries in Africa? What do you think about South America? I mean, it is not representing the total diversity of data,
Mm.
and we have this large language model which is being just trained on that data, right? So there is a bias, and because of that bias, your outcome might not be fair. These two are the main thing, and of course the privacy concern. So if someone goes and say, hey, you have used my data, you didn't even ask me, then you are into lawsuit without getting a proper consent. It's a bad world. It's very fast moving, and people don't even, including me, I don't even read every terms and condition. I just scroll down, tick, confirm.
Agreed, yeah.
But those things are the things where I think education should come into play.
Mm.
People should think about it, because people don't understand what could go wrong, not to them but someone like them. Then there is a big fear of job displacement. Like, if I put this AI system, what will I do with my workforce? Say I had 10 people. Like, you need to think about, you need to reimagine your workplace. These are the 10 jobs my 10 people are doing. If I augment 6 of those jobs, how can I use my 10 resources effectively to do something different? Or, like, that piece of puzzle is always, again, it goes back to the core values of the company, what they think about their people, how they,
Mm.
everything is tied back. But it's just that needs a lot of inputs from multiple stakeholders.
Then it ties back to the enterprise strategy. There is the values, but with technology as evolved over years, things will be made obsolete, but there are new opportunities that are created. So moving from when people traveled with horses and buggies, and then the automotive came up, yes, there wasn't as much demand for horseshoes and horses and buggies, but there was a new in the industry, the people who would mechanics or garages and things like that. So I think it's really about that, like going back to what you're saying, how can you redeploy people? And that might involve, again, training, reskilling, and investing in education of the workforce so that they're able to harness AI and to do those creative things. Because you've emphasized this over this conversation about human beings, that creative aspect, that ability to understand context and nuance and apply it to the situation.
Yeah, so I was fortunate to work with For Humanity, one of an NGO, which basically is trying to certify people to look into auditing AI systems. So EU AI Act is now in place. It will be enforced soon. So you need people to have controls on all these AI systems to protect. It's done to protect people, right? It's done to protect the enterprise. So I was fortunate enough to be part of that community, working closely with the Operation Research Society. You should be passionate enough. You should find time to do it, and if you do it, then the universe will find a way to give you something interesting to work with. And yeah, OR Society, Alan Turing Institute, the For Humanity Society, I had few ICO workshops, which was quite interesting, because when you hear perspective from people from different facet of life, like lawyers and solicitors, you would think, this statement I wouldn't interpret in this way.
Hmm.
It was a good learning experience, and I'm sure if I have time, I would still continue to do that, and invest time in ethical AI. As technology, it's not only AI, it's ethical use of technology, and sustainability is also part of ethical bucket if you look into it. So there was an interesting paper, and it talks about how many data centers have been opened between 2018 to 2024, which is like 6 years, and the power consumption has gone from X to 3 times X or 2 times X. So we have opened a lot. We have already caused damage to the environment with all these technology, and just because the technology is there doesn't mean we have to use it. But again, it's that educational bit. What is the right thing to do? And even the ESG awareness, people are
Hmm.
not aware. Like now, if you go to like the current TikTok trenders, they know, like, I need to look into certified B Corp when I am buying
Yes.
something. The reason is because they know, and they are more passionate about saving the world. Maybe we are not. I don't know. But again, once you start educating and telling those stories, probably, I mean, humans are really good. So we will have a change of heart.
What I'm hearing you say is that education is key. to help us to make informed choices. There is a time and place where you need to use AI, but not everything requires it. And if we're more thoughtful in how we approach, these, because these are tools at the end of the day, then we can at least try to be more balanced in, the risks, taking advantage of opportunities versus, the risks around it and the impact these decisions and tools that we choose to use make on the environment. What books have you found yourself recommending most to people, and why?
Because we have been talking on AI, I think I can give you some books that is fresh in my memory. AI Superpower is one book which was written by Kai Fu Lee. There is this book by Brian Christian, Alignment of Human Values and Machine Learning. It was basically talking about what are the human values, where do you want to use machine learning, how do you basically, come up with a decision making. It was a really interesting read. Then there was a book called Ethical Machines by Reed Blackman. So
Okay.
it talks about all the ethical facet of AI, like biases, fairness, data privacy, transparency, explainability, and he gives quite a detailed example and walkthrough of what that means. Another interesting book was Human AI Translator Wanted. It was by a Dutch professor. Again, really, really lovely narration of what algorithms are, what AI is, where and all you should think about, what controls and stuff like that. So that is an interesting book. Harvard professor Karim Lakhani, he wrote
Yeah.
something called
Computing in
in
the
the
age of AI. Yeah.
Algorithmic Leader by Mike Welch is another good book which I finished like a couple of months back.
And if the audience wants to find you,
They can always reach out to me at LinkedIn. I would be happy to touch base through LinkedIn.
okay, LinkedIn. Awesome. And do you have any final words and or ask of the audience?
The final word is like, again, responsible use of technology. Think about not just the use case, think about the environmental impact, think about future generation, because yeah, I think the damage is already done. So at least not in this lifetime, maybe 3 or 4 lifetimes down the line, it might not be the beautiful earth that we have.
It's been a pleasure, as always, speaking with you, Bala, and thank you so much for sharing your insights and wisdom. And thank you for
No,
being a guest on the Agile Innovation Leaders podcast.
thank you. Lovely conversation. And yeah, looking forward to connecting with more like minded LinkedIn colleagues.
That's all we have for now. Thanks for listening. If you like this show, do subscribe at www.agileinnovationleaders.com. That's agileinnovationleaders.com, or your favorite podcast provider. Also share with friends and do leave a review on iTunes. This would help others find this show. I'd also love to hear from you, so please drop me an email at ola@agileinnovationleaders.com. Take care and God bless.